Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video we're going to finally look at what the static operator does in Java. Or the static modifier I should say. So in our main class, for example, we see that there is the static, there's a static word right before our void main. What does this mean? Well, to see what it is, suppose that we're in our assignment class, and suppose that we want to create some kind of method, and that method will give us the assignment that is like closest to our current date. So today is the 26th, and let's say that there's an assignment for maybe for a student that's due on the 27th, and one that's due on the 28th, and then one that's due May the 2nd. So we would want the one on the 27th. So to do that, we would just do public assignment get closest assignment, and then all we would do is we would get a list of assignments, and then we would do assignments. Okay, and now we're getting a compiler error because we're not returning anything. So let's just return null for now. And what we're going to do is we're just going to let's actually, if assignments is equal to null, then no, we don't need that. We can assume that the assignments aren't going to be null, and we're just going to iterate over each assignment, and let's store the date of each assignment inside of a long. So what does this actually equal 0? Okay, so to do this first let's consider how this works though. Each date, all it is it's an indication of how far we are into the future. So in the 1970s, I believe, they came together and they said, okay, you know what, this is going to be times 0. So this is times 0 in milliseconds. And then every millisecond after that, they kind of just added on to the like a counter, and you get what's called like, for example, if we were to do this system.currentTime_millis, what this does, let's look at the documentation. It returns the current time in milliseconds. So this number is very large. It's basically the number of milliseconds since 1970. Just think about it that way, actually. So each date can be converted to a current time in millis, which is just the number of milliseconds since 1970, which is when they started keeping track. So we're just going to start this at 0, and what we're going to do is we want the closest time. So if assignment.massignment due date is less than date, and we say that, and we need to convert this let's see here, get time. So we're going to convert this into milliseconds since 1970, January 1, 1970, and we're going to make sure that it's less than date, and if that's true, then date is equal to assignment time, and then we need another variable up here. We need to do let's just do a closest assignment, and then we'll do closest assignment is equal to assignment, and then we're going to return closest assignment. So this isn't quite going to work. Oh, we need to make this null. We need to initialize it. So this isn't quite going to work because we want the minimum possible value, yet our initial value is 0, which is less than any possible value we could give, right? So we can either an easy way to fix this is just to do max value. So what this does is it initializes this to a very, very large number, 2 to the 63 minus 1. Pretty much every millisecond date that we provide is going to be less than that. Okay, so if we had an assignment due on April the 15th, one that's due April the 16th, one that's due April the 17th, this method is going to return the one that's due April the 15th, even if our current date is April the 30th. Okay, so now, I mean, this is fine, but the problem is, suppose we had an array of assignments. Let me comment these guys out. So if we had an array of assignments, we could do assignment, let's just copy this actually. assignment is equal to, and then let me block things over there, and that should work. Yeah, perfect. So now we have an array of assignments. But now, how do we actually call this? How do we call this method right here? In order to, this is an instance method. In order to call this method, we need to have an assignment object. Okay, fine, we can do that. Assignment is equal to new assignment, and we can populate it with just junk data pretty much. And then we can do assignment dot get assignment get farthest, and then we can pass in all of these assignments, and then we can farthest and we can do that. But this doesn't really make any sense, because in order to call this method, we need to create a new assignment with junk data, and then we need to call this method on it. Suppose this constructor had been more complex, suppose it had maybe a few more arguments, or suppose each of these arguments required some other object that was itself complicated. So that in itself is annoying. And then in order to actually get this, we have to take this assignment object and then call this method on it. So surely there's a way that we don't have to generate an assignment object. And in fact, if we use this static modifier, what this does is it makes this function static. This means that you don't need to construct an assignment object. So now it becomes a lot more simple. Now we can just comment this guy out, or we can just delete it actually, and now we can access the method by using this assignment class. So what this says, it says go into the assignment class and then call the get farthest in past assignment method, which is static. We're able to do this because it's static. We go in here and now we access the static method, and we can just pass in a bunch of assignments and loop through them all and find the one whose date is farthest in the past. So to test this, let's just system.out.println farthest in past. Now each of these assignments that we initialized, they're all initialized to today's date. So just to make this explicit, let's initialize this one to today's date minus 24 hours times 30 times 60 minutes per hour times 60 seconds per hour times 1000 milliseconds. So that's going to be equal to the number of milliseconds in 1 day, basically. And this is going to be farthest in the past, this bio homework biology. Print it out, and yeah, we need to actually, let's do get name. Do that, and we get bio homework. Okay, so that worked. So, in general, when should you use static? Well, you use static when you have maybe like a function or variable that isn't specific to your class. So we could put this static function anywhere. We can take it and we can just drop it into our main class, for example. But now, because it's not in the assignment class anymore, we get rid of this, and now we can just access it directly. Get farthest assignment in past. And then we would also need to do get assignment due date, because it's no longer, we no longer have access to these variables directly. So why would you put it in the assignment class? Well, we put it in the assignment class because it makes sense intuitively. Intuitively, it makes sense that we would, look for assignments inside of our assignment class. You don't need to construct an assignment in order to use this function. This function or method is related to assignments, and so we keep it inside here. Okay, so let's fix some of these compiler issues. I think we're all good. Okay, so now, what are some rules about using static methods or variables? Well, if you have this static modifier, everything inside of here, it can only access other static stuff surrounding it. So we couldn't access this mname variable, for example. We couldn't do this. Mname is equal to nothing. We couldn't do this because we're inside the static method and we're trying to access these instance variables. Mname is an item that's specific to this assignment class. But here we're inside of the static method, which isn't specific to a specific instance. It's kind of separate from each assignment object. So you can think about it like that. Like, there's a bunch of separate assignment objects, and each of those assignment objects has a name, a class name, and a due date. And that's fine. But if inside of this static method we don't have access, we're not allowed to access any of those, because in order to do so, this would make it a non-static method. So you can also declare static variables. And these are useful when you want to maybe like store a global like constant. Let's say you can say maybe like assignment default score is equal to 20 points, and then we need to, so this is an integer. And now what we can do is in our main class we can access that variable very easily. Assignment.default score. So then we can do score is equal to that. But remember, because this variable was final, we couldn't change its value in here. From start to finish, from the beginning of our main function to the end of our main function, we can access this assignment default score variable. Whereas maybe like if we had a method that, for example, if we just had a method that created an assignment, is there a good example anywhere here? Maybe if we did this, new assignment. If we just did this variable, as soon as we go out of scope, as soon as we leave this do something method, you can't access this assignment variable anymore, or this assignment object anymore, and so it gets deleted, it gets garbage collected. Static variables aren't like that. When you create them, they're around from the beginning to the end of your program's execution. Alright, so when should you use static variables? Generally, use them when you need to share global information. So like this piece of information might be global. You might need it in a bunch of other classes. This function, for example, this method, it's not specific to a specific assignment, but it's related to assignments, right? You're passing in a bunch of assignments. You're finding the minimum due date, and you're using some of these you're using like these variables right here, and you don't want to use these accessors. So in this case, you might want this function to be static. Other than that, in the next video, we're going to go over the Singleton design pattern, and that also uses static. And that's pretty much the final case of scenarios in which you would use static. Alright, I'll see you guys then.